What does my shirt say? Sorry for what I said while fasting. Sorry what I said while fasting. It's playing off the hangry thing. The Joe Pesci Snickers commercials. This is not an endorsement, by the way. They say, you're not yourself when you're hungry and they get hangry. That's what it's about. I got a couple more coming, trying different ones. Oh, there we go. Sorry for what I said while fasting. But the thing is, if you do it right, you don't really get that hangry. I've been in that spot before. I know what that feels like. I've been around people that feel like that. It's not fun, but it's, for the most part, it's pretty avoidable. It's pretty preventable if you do it right. Again, we want to make it a lifestyle, so we got plenty of time to do that. Jill Whitaker says, Saturday is your birthday. Well, happy birthday, Jill. Trying to get my shirt. I get it. Hey, Steve. All right. It is now 4:02, so if I missed anybody, I'm sorry. Good to see you. Hi, Rhonda, Mary. They come in pretty quick. Today we're going to talk about metabolic physical activity and exercise, metabolic exercise. I think that the understanding around how important exercise can be for metabolism, for metabolic health, and for hormones is really, really played down. Your ability to incorporate your muscle into your metabolism is tremendous. Everybody pretty much knows that muscle burns more fat, more energy than fat, right? When we use it. It's a really important, hey Jane, hi Heidi. It's a really important distinction. We like to compare muscle as the metabolic tissue of our body. Skeletal muscle, burning all our calories, right? And then fat, doing nothing. At rest, they both do nothing. They don't do too much. But when we're active, when we're using them, that's when muscle really just skyrockets. Okay? We can use that switch to our advantage. Thanks, George. We can use that fit to our advantage. We can use that that change in energy to our advantage. The majority of our calories, the majority of our body's energy is used up at rest, not when we're active. So when we're active, when we go do a workout, our muscles get all the credit and all this stuff going on, but it's then the response afterwards that allows the body to become more efficient and burn better throughout, and it's the brain, heart, kidneys, liver, they do the big heavy work. So if you want to burn more calories, you want to increase your metabolism, I do recommend exercise. I totally do. I think it's crucial, and I'll tell you why in a second. But you want to focus on your brain health, heart health, kidney health, and liver health, because they're going to do the heavy lifting, not the muscles. But the muscles have a very unique characteristic. First, we'll go into insulin, because that's the key to all of this. Insulin is, a lot of people like to look at diabetes and metabolic issues from a blood sugar point of view. Let's look just from an insulin point of view. Okay? Insulin, what does insulin do? Where does insulin play in this game? Insulin is the gatekeeper that decides whether we burn energy coming in or we store it. That's the main job of insulin. That's it. Insulin's job is to open up the vaults for our savings account and allow us to deposit that in there when we have it. And insulin and only insulin holds that key. If the insulin keeps that key closed, then that money come in and gets spent. If it opens up the door, then the workers come in and they pile the money into the vault, and that's called body fat. So as energy's coming in, insulin's standing at the door like a bouncer, right? Like a bouncer at a fancy party in New York or something. And the bouncer's got his list. And the bouncer decides who gets in and who gets out. Right? Bouncer decides the flow. So, insulin's a bouncer. Insulin lets some in and doesn't. If it doesn't let him in, then it gets circulated around, stays in the blood, and gets used up for energy. If it opens up the door, that food goes in and it gets stored. And we're talking about glucose. All right, we eat food, glucose gets broken down, comes into our blood, goes up a little bit, gets to the storage place, insulin decides, open or close, and that's insulin's job. Let's not make this more complicated than it has to be. Insulin determines if we store energy or we burn it. Okay, you follow me? You with me so far? Hey, Tim. Tracy keeps on pausing. Oh, well, you got to upgrade your phone or something, Tracy. I don't know. Your internet connection. So we're just focused on insulin. All right, that's a big part of the problem. Is everywhere else is focused on blood sugar. We're looking at the effect. We're trying to look at what's going on with the cause. All right, so insulin's there. Now, over time, when insulin is stimulated by a number of things. The majority of insulin stimulation, we don't even know exactly where it comes from, believe it or not. Overall, 23% of insulin stimulation comes from carbohydrates. Doesn't sound like much, but it is when you consider 10% can come from protein. Fat has 0, and then 67% is other factors. Other hormones are the way we eat, when we eat, how we move, how we sleep. All these different things have an influence. But carbohydrates, as we know, are the biggest offenders. And so when you're living your normal life and insulin is getting turned on, as in overexposure, what happens is it starts whipping those workers to shuttle the glucose from the blood into the vault. It opens that door, wants us to store. Eventually that vault starts to get full and there's a capacity issue. It can only put so much in there. And that's a problem. That's when insulin resistance really begins. But there's one step before that. Your muscles and your liver also can store energy, as in glycogen. Glycogen is glucose stuck together in chains to be stored away. It's like having extra cash in your pocket versus putting it into your savings account. Don't have to spend it, but if something you want comes up, you can buy it, right? But it's not so much that you're going to worry about it and have to put it in the bank. That's what glycogen is. The bank is where you keep your gold. You don't carry that around. I know Alita's got some bling out there, and I know she's not going to wear it on the street, so I get it. So that's the idea. Now, that energy that you can store in your muscle only works for the muscle. People like to talk about fasting, and you have to use up all your glycogen first. You have to use up your liver glycogen. You have to use up your muscle glycogen. That's not true. Not when you're metabolically fit and flexible. We can talk about that, but this is where you want to go. That muscle can open up its stores and fill its pockets with cash. Now the difference is someone who's sedentary versus somebody who is a competitive athlete, they can have a 4,000% difference in how much glycogen or how much energy they can store in their pockets. That's a lot of cash. That's a big difference, 4,000%. Huge. And it's that gap in there that makes exercise so crucial for our metabolic health. Because if we can open that gap, move away from the sedentary, and we may not get to be a competitive athlete, but open up our pockets to be able to hold on to some more immediate cash, that will buffer these ups and downs that go on with blood sugar, insulin, and other things, and allow us to heal as we are moving forward. That's how come people can see a change in blood sugar before they see the change in insulin. Exercise, but there's a particular kind of exercise that is crucial. Around the block right now. Alita, you do my workouts, right? You do the 12-minute workout. I like that. Mountain biking. Cool. Every time we work out, we make our body use a certain kind of fuel, whether we're trying to or not. It's just the way it goes. When you force a function, after you're done, it relaxes and recovers. Just like if you take a long walk, eventually you sit down, you got to rest because you just walked a long time. So when you exercise, you're making your body use either fat or sugar for energy. Whichever one it uses, when you're done, it'll take a break and flip back to the other one. Okay? Traditional cardio, like cycling, like walking, like jogging, where they want the target heart rate on the machine, that kind of exercise, I see a lot of walking out there, that kind of exercise pushes fat burning. That's why they want to see you in that target range, because you're burning more fat. And in the course of 40 minutes of that kind of workout, you will burn fat. Maybe a half of an olive worth of fat, but you'll burn it. And then as soon as you're done, it'll switch. Because you just pushed a pathway. When it's done, it'll take a rest and recover. So if you're burning fat in your exercise, like with cardio, when you're done, what are you going to burn? What's the other option? Sugar. You'll push yourself into sugar burning. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a problem, but we'll get to that. When you work out hard, like intense, not just big numbers or long duration, I'm talking intensity. If you push the intensity, that makes your body use sugar because you need that energy fast. That's where those stores come in. That's why the athlete has so much, because if they're a sprinter or if they need to have an explosive sport, they need that intensity and they need to be able to fuel it, and they've trained their body to be able to do that. So they have more stores. They have a bigger gas tank, bigger pockets for that cash in the muscle. If we don't have big pockets, we can't hold much cash. So when we start to push intensity, we won't go too far, and it'll stop put the energy out of its reserves. You have only a little bit of flexibility, right? And so people will get fatigued faster. Blood sugar won't be able to be regulated as well. That's the first stage. That's muscular insulin resistance, because there's no capacity in there. Their gas tanks are little, so they have to keep dumping them and filling them. Whereas an athlete or someone who's training or working with intensity, they got bigger gas tanks. They got more flexibility. They can handle exercise more. That means that the hormones will stay nice and calm. And then when we eat again, that a lot of that food that we come in will go to glucose, and it'll refill our pockets before it goes to the vault to store as fat. So we have flexibility as part of metabolic flexibility. So if you do an intense workout like weightlifting, HIIT training, what I call variable output exercise, something that's really hard, short duration, you're going to huff, you're going to puff, you're going to sweat, you got to push yourself, but you'll really crank that sugar burning in the muscle system. As soon as you're done, you'll flip over to fat burning. And when they tested this on people, that fat burning was higher than they were prior. And it stayed higher for up to 38 hours after the workout. They called it the afterburn. So by doing a high intensity training, then keeping your diet in check with insulin-friendly living concepts, you'll keep burning after that workout, possibly to the next day and possibly to your next workout. Because you just forced it to go further into that pathway. So if you were a sugar burner going in and you did cardio, making yourself burn fat, when you're done, you'll push sugar burning back and harder than it was. Whereas if you were a fat burner going into a workout, you'll push sugar burning, and then you'll come out and you'll push fat burning again harder than you were going in. It compounds. It's a magnifier. Ever heard that? Lifestyle magnifiers. So that's the key. The key is being able to learn what it takes to push your intensity, doing it on a regular basis so you build up your stamina, your strength, and what will happen is your glycogen stores, your cash in the pockets of your muscle, will get bigger. You'll be able to hold a bigger wad of cash. And that'll give you a lot of flexibility. You can shop, you can do things, you can move around, you can buy more stuff, and your body can do the same thing. It can use that energy for different things, and then when it gets low, it'll take on more energy out of the blood, out from the blood sugar, to keep the blood sugar down. When that gets to capacity, then the blood sugar goes up. The muscle, even everyone will eventually get to that. Their muscle just can only take so much, and it's done. Then it goes into the bloodstream. Now there's more blood sugar going up. Our blood sugar goes up after we eat, gets to the vault, and if those workers, like we said earlier, have been whipped, and they've been working, they're not going to respond too well. They're not into it. They're not getting overtime, but they're getting overworked. And that mechanism starts to fail, and they can't get that sugar into the fat cells, into the vault fast enough, and what happens again? Blood sugar goes up. Got it? All because we're triggering insulin too often, too much, all day long, all night long. Muscles get to capacity really quick, and then if we don't keep training with intensity, they won't expand their capacity, so then it spills over to the blood again. Then when it hits the fat cells, we might have already gained a lot of weight, because it'll cause a lot of weight gain, but it can't keep up with what we're putting in, and so the blood sugar goes up, and that's when people get identified as diabetic, and we start to whip. Well, who do we whip? We whip insulin. But insulin's been screaming. That won't fix the problem. We have to go in and we have to fix that mechanism. We have to help those. We have to give support to those workers, get them working, get them happy again, get them really going. We need to increase our capacity by lowering our exposure through diet, through meal timing and fasting, and we got to increase our metabolic flexibility with the glycogen stores. So we have to incorporate exercise. You have to. You can't get there otherwise. This process will go on. Right now, the default in our culture, in our society, is the process I'm talking about. So if you're not proactively improving your health here, you will passively lose it. That's just the way it is. There's too much that out there, and it's all for just some exercise. Our exercise starts at 12 minutes a day. 12 minutes. Who can't do 12? The way how someone responds to exercise is very similar to how someone responds to fasting. It's a very similar state. They both promote autophagy. They both have a similar hormone shift. They both raise human growth hormone. The question is, how is it going to show up in you? Right? Everyone is going to have a different reaction. We get 5 people lined up to do the same workout. They're all going to have a different reaction. You have an athlete here, someone who's never worked out, been on the couch here, someone who's recovering from a broken foot here, someone who's 10 years old, someone who's 80 years old. Same workout, very different response. All right. Whole body vibration, Ruben says. Yep, that's good. That's good. I like to do it under stress. If you have some weights, and you can, or if you don't have weights, you can go on it really slow, super slow, like 6 seconds down in a squat. Pause for 4, up for 6. Don't lock out and go back into your next one. If you get through 3, you're pretty good. Controls that door. And if you want to make it boil down to weight loss, we can. That's easy. I get that. Insulin decides if we put on body fat or we take it off. That's it. If you're gaining weight, insulin is out there screaming, keeping the doors open. If you have weight to gain, if you have weight to lose, that means insulin was doing that. And now that you're trying, if it doesn't come off, insulin's holding the door closed. It's another problem. Got it? That's the only way it works. It doesn't work any way around insulin. So, and then if insulin's orders aren't going well because of the overworked system, overworked workers at the vault, or we don't increase the capacity through our muscles, then it starts to back up, and how that looks is increased blood sugar. That's why you can take a medication and lower blood sugar, because who knows where it goes, but it lowers. But you still got insulin screaming and whipping the mechanics of the thing, and you're going down the same road, except now you have less blood sugar. All right. Kathy says her exercise lately is chasing a toddler at the playground. That'll work. That is exercise, because not everything is exercise. Walking, I don't consider walking exercise. It is physical activity. I call it stress relief cardio. It is important. I do it every day. But it's not exercise. Exercise, you got to have an intent to do it. You got to get ready. You got to put your clothes on, and you got to go. Right? And then the next level from exercise, you want to push intensity. Learn what it feels. Intensity is awkward. It doesn't feel great. Sometimes you can feel nauseous. People in my gym used to think they're going to throw up. They never did, but maybe they could. I don't know. But they thought they would because it didn't feel good. When you push intensity, it's uncomfortable. But that uncomfortability is what makes us change. That's what turns on the start, stop, start genes. That's what we're trying to do. That's why when we change up the frequency of our eating, we're stopping and starting the same genes. That's why we do different activities throughout the day, like the walks. We're doing the same thing. We're activating different systems. We want the body to change, and the only way it changes is because it has to get a little bit awkward, a little uncomfortable. All right, who else is out there? Let's see, got any questions? I've been going for about 20 minutes, so let's see what you say. Jill says it makes sense. All right. You still want that shirt, don't you? So one of the key areas that you can focus on, especially as you get used to the diet concept of what to eat, as well as when to eat with the frequency, you can work on your intensity. You can work on exercise. The walking is a very interesting response in the body. I'm waiting for some questions if you're out there. Get things. The walking, thanks George. The walking kind of burns through any excess stuff that goes on. So like you take a walk, and if you have your cortisol's going or your insulin's still up, it seems to be able to bring it down. Kind of like burns it off. That's why people go walking after a meal. Helps with, if it's nice and slow, it'll help with digestion. If it's too fast, it'll shut it down. Right? So just a nice walk, and you burn off those extra things. You do it several times a day, and your head just lightens up. Your thinking gets clearer. It's really interesting. Who else is out there? And again, it doesn't have to be long and hard, but long and boring. It can be very short and intense. If you get to a point where you can do your intensity training for a long time, you're better off making it more intense than making it longer, because eventually you'll start going the other way. All right? You work out hard, it puts strain on the body, puts strain on the muscles, right? They need to repair. The only way to repair is to get out of the fed state. You don't want to drive more of that sugar because that pushes us in the fed state that we were trying to get out of. That's why when you work out, everyone thinks that you're breaking down muscle and it's going to rebuild. Yeah, but they're two different tones of the body, breakdown versus repair. And so when they go and have their post-workout shake, they have the whey protein and the carbs and all these fancy things. They're pushing themselves into the fed state. They're pushing away repair. And I don't know why. They think that food that they're taking is going into their belly, into their blood, and out to the body, and it's going to repair that muscle that they just worked out right then. I don't think that makes sense at all. Repair comes from yesterday. Repair comes from last night's sleep. It doesn't come from this moment right now. It's a process. And so we know that by taking a powdered protein of any kind, you crank insulin. So what does insulin do? Closes the door. You're not burning fat, or at least you're going to slow it down. You're hindering it. You're young enough, you can probably get away with anything. All right. Love thinking of stress, walking as stress reduction. Yeah, stress relief cardio, that's what it is. Todd talks about taking heart meds, your heart rate down, can't get in the target market. Hey, you're on medications to lower your heart rate. Of course, it's going to lower stuff. It's a drug, right? It's up to you. Intensity is very individual. You're better off doing a few little intensity things than one big long one, or not doing it all, right? Not doing it all. Very different. So if you had a physical trauma like a car accident, fasting would be a good idea. What? I'm not for... Fasting promotes healing. Healing is a regeneration of cells and tissue. Okay? Fasting promotes that in the full force phases of the cycle. Fasting alone by not eating doesn't promote a whole lot. Okay? It's everything else you do around it, during, and after that gives you the big picture of what we call healing. Fasting itself is just not eating. Fasting means abstaining, the intentional abstaining from eating. It's not an accident. You didn't run out of food. You're not a prisoner. You chose not to eat. That's fasting. Okay? That's it. And so when you fast, it sets the stage for certain things to happen when you start to eat again. Okay? And if you've gone into the fast well and you're in a good state going in, it's primed and ready to do that. If you didn't, it's going to be a struggle. That's when people get real hangry or they get ugly when they start to fast. So use the physical activity for a lot of reasons. One is it calms the system over time. In that moment when you work out, you get worked up. Your blood pressure goes up. Everything raises. You get a higher heart rate. But what's the net effect? Lower heart rate. Lower blood pressure. You crank it up there so that you can have it lower over time. Same thing when we're eating. We should be fed and then a lot of repair. A little bit of fed, a lot of repair. Cyclic, not constant. Cyclic, not constant. Right? Fed and repair state are both important. They're both 100% important and vital, but they're not 50-50 partners. Okay? They're not 50-50 partners. All right, piggybacking off the fed state prevents muscle repair. Yeah, because when you're eating, what are you doing to that food? Think of it that way. You're breaking it down. So your body turns on the breakdown switch. And you can't just break down things in your mouth and not in your stomach, or in your stomach and not in your body. It's all or nothing. You're in breakdown mode. You'll break down more protein from your muscle while you eat than while you are in fasting. You don't break down muscle. Try that one on. All those people who think that you're eating your muscle and you're going to waste away. No, you do that when you eat too much or too frequently throughout the day. You're actually promoting more breakdown because you're sticking in the fed state of breakdown. All right, is there a place for using ACV to promote better insulin levels? Yeah, I've read about it many times in the guides in the group. I would take apple cider vinegar every day. It's been shown to help with insulin response, as in sensitivity. It's been shown to help with blood sugar. And one study a while ago, it beat metformin, the medication. And it's been around forever, so I like it. Stress is not good for diabetes. No, stress is not good or bad. We make up what that means. Okay, your body responds to stress. If you're not stressing your body, it'll break down. What kind of stress, how often, how you respond to it, now that's a whole nother ball of wax, right? Whole nother thing. You need stress. The less stress you have in your life, the sicker you'll get. That's why right now, when everyone's locked down, hiding, sanitizing everything, we're going to see a big wave of illness because we've got no challenge. You can't live in a sterile environment. You're not supposed to. There are more bacteria in and on our body than there are human cells. Cell for cell, we're a big walking bacteria, not a person. 100 times more cells. Pretty significant. It all has to work together. All right, does keeping insulin low help lower cortisol? Cortisol, that's a funny one. We don't have the good test for cortisol. The test that they use isn't really appropriate for overall levels, even if they do it 5 times a day. Cortisol spikes and comes down. It doesn't stay like this, like people think. It's cyclic as well. All hormones are cyclic, right? And so when it goes up, it comes down, within 25, 40 minutes, it's back to baseline or around baseline. So if you happen to test it there, it's going to look good. If you happen to test it and you were thinking about your divorce, boom, maybe it's up. You're going to look artificially high. That test is very hard to interpret that way. But they do have a relationship. Insulin and cortisol are buddies, minions, back from the old days. And when they get together, they can cause some havoc, especially when they get out of control. And it comes from how we eat and how we think, as in how we deal with stress. That's why we talk about what you eat, when you eat, as well as stress resilience, not stress management. You can try to manage it all you want, count to 10. If it helps, great. But I want to build my resilience. Your resilience determines how you respond. Cortisol. People say cortisol is bad because I'm in an inflammatory state, Yes, and cortisol is your anti-inflammatory. Cortisol is the most powerful anti-inflammatory we've ever seen. Prednisone is trying to be synthetic cortisol. Your body can make these chemicals way better than we can in a lab and a pharmaceutical, by far. We need to activate it and let it work. If you have high cortisol, you have high inflammation. The cortisol doesn't cause the inflammation, it's the result of the inflammation. Right? Just like with the blood sugar. Blood sugar is not the problem, it's the effect of the problem. Inflammation, and the problem with inflammation isn't really inflammation. We need it as part of the immune response. We need inflammation. We probably need more. But what we need to do is we need to be able to resolve it. There's a bell curve. Inflammation goes up, and then it hits a peak, then it comes back down in what's called the resolution phase. If we don't have a strong resolution phase, it kind of flutters up there and stays up. That's what they talk about with chronic inflammation. So we don't have to stop inflammation most of the time. We have to increase resolution. And where does that come from? Everything we're talking about. Insulin-friendly living. All right, let's see. But if you're talking about going low calorie, you can't increase what lowers our metabolic rate is a constant reduction in food and activity. We cut ourselves back. We talked about this last time. We cut ourselves back by 500 calories, like they tell you, over 7 days, 500 a day. That's 3,500. That's supposed to be a pound of fat, and that's where the big dieting concept came from. But over time, because that's your body's budget, your body money is getting paid, just got to cut and budget. The body will adapt its spending, and then it'll lower the metabolism to match what's coming in. That's why you don't burn more energy. You don't raise your metabolism just because you work out today, or you didn't eat something, or whatever. It doesn't change day by day, but over time it adapts to the pattern. You can raise it over time, just not today to tomorrow, next day. Even if you worked out 3 hours today, you work just like remember the blood pressure? It goes up when you work out, then you have a net effect of lowering. Same thing. When you work out, you burn more, but then you have a net effect of burning less throughout the day and at night. It's just the body does that. It's got a budget. All right, so the object of the game is to gain muscle in the body. You want to have functional muscle mass. All muscle at all costs will cost years off people's lives. Too much muscle is as dangerous as too much fat. Yes, I said that. Too much muscle is as dangerous as too much fat. People, pro bodybuilders, power lifters, Olympic lifters, people who are very, very muscular, their life expectancy isn't that much different than someone who is morbidly obese. I call it the excess tissue hypothesis. It's just tissue. Your body has to work hard to keep it going. And the more you have, the harder it works, the more of an impact it has. In Okinawa, where they live to be 100 years old, the centenarians, they did a huge study. Why are they living so long? And why are some living so long and some aren't? In the same place, eating the same way, doing the same thing. What they found, they went through all the statistics, they spent years doing this. The only thing they could find is the difference was height. 3 inches of height. If you were at a certain height, if you passed a certain height, if you got too tall, you only lived to 75, 80. If you didn't, you could get to 100. That was it. Height. Why? More tissue. More volume. And that's bone, and that's everything. That's going up. Same thing. Too heavy, too much stress on the system having to work with it. Too muscular, same thing. It's not any muscle absolutely at any cost. Unless you want to go for aesthetics today, you're going to have to sacrifice years tomorrow. That's a choice. But most people don't know they're making it. All right. So 68 years old, out of shape. Should I ease into HIIT? You don't have a choice. What are you going to do? Go do a power squat first time working out? You can't do it if you wanted to. Yeah, you got to do what you're capable of. But just intensity is relative, right? What's intense for me might not be intense for an athlete at all, right? What's intense for me, what's intense for me, you don't know. Might be someone else's goal to get to. I don't know. Intensity is very relative, right? Very relative. You don't judge it against someone else. That's why I can't tell you just go do this workout and you'll meet your intensity needs. I don't know. I don't know who you are, what's going on, what your experience is. And so I don't like answering questions like that. But yeah, you want to push your intensity. It could take up to 6 weeks to really learn the full feeling of intensity. So take your time and try to do it better every time, every workout.